time with you. So Ayo, the enthusiastic tutor. In today's tutorial, it's going to be the very first tutorial we're having on the course, PAD122, all right, which is all about psychology, all right, industrial psychology. With this being said, let's hop straight into it. But just before we go straight into it, I need you to please bear in mind that we need to move at a little, all right, bit of a fast, all right, pace compared to what we used to do before, so we can cover a lot of courses, all right, in a short while. Okay, with this being said, let's go through. So on the comment section, I have Mr. Richard, good evening. Miss Fatima, Fatima, good evening. All right, so let's hop straight into it. So we have, I think I should reduce the backlight. It's reflecting on the board. It's kind of too bright. Okay, now we have part 1, 2, 2, and we have industrial psychology. Now, industrial psychology is, all right, industrial psychology as a subfield of psychology can be dated back to the work of notable writers. All right, industrial psychology. Before we talk about what it is and what it means, all right, now industrial, you should know that industrial psychology can be dated back to the work of some notable writers such as Hugo, Frank, all right, Frederick Taylor, Easton Mayor, Abraham Maslow, and the likes. All right. Now, industrial psychology as a subfield of psychology, all right, is focused on issues. All right, it's focused on issues of man at work as a subfield of psychology is focused on what? Issues of man at work. Okay, now although industries are what? Commonly associated with machines, irrespective of the fact that industries are commonly associated with machine, we cannot overemphasize on the fact that, all right, we cannot dispute the fact that human beings still plays a very important role in the activities of an organization. All right, human being still happens to be an important component. All right, now philosophers such as Socrates and Plato speculated a lot about human behavior. Now, when we say focusing on issues of man at work, all right, speaking of the issues of man at work, we need to go down into details by talking about how people, all right, how workers, how personnel behave at work. All right, if we can talk about how they are behaving, then we can address these issues at work. So philosophers such as Socrates and Plato speculated a lot about human behavior. Now, in extreme cases, we have seen stereotypes, all right, we have seen prejudice, stereotype built on faulty premises and assumptions about other natives, ethnic groups, and nationalities. Now, the term psychology now is now said. Before we talk, now don't forget that this is a combination of two words. Industrial psychology. Like psychology here on its own is a word. Industrial, speaking of industry, is another entity on its own. But let's take it one step at a time. Speaking of psychology itself is what? A combination of two words. A combination of two words, and we have psych and logos. Psych and logos. Psych means mind. Are we together? And logos means word. Speaking of which, in the past, psychology is deemed as a study of the mind and mental life, and it still holds up to now. Speaking of psychology, it's still the study of the mind. Now, the Bible even says that in the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. So, if you can understand the mind, the words that will proceed can be predicted. In the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. Psychology deals with how people behave. Nobody behaves anyhow without something prompting it. Something, impetus that prompts certain behavior. Is those impetus that psychologists now looks into. But now, it is not in aspect of the place of work, not generally now. And that's where we have industrial psychology. Now, although psychologists such as J.B. Watson, psychologists such as, good evening, Miss Happiness, it's been a while, it's good to see you on board. Psychology such as J.B. Watson, okay, sees the mind as something that is unobservable and difficult to subject to what? To scientific study. Sees the mind as observable. This psychologist, Watson, he sees the mind as something that you cannot observe. It is unobservable, and you cannot subject it to what we call scientific study. Unlike Sigmund Freud, in his own view, he does not see the mind as unobservable. Rather, he sees the mind as something that can be observed, and therefore he propounded method for study of human, mind. That's Sigmund Freud. He propounded method for the study of the mind called psychoanalysis. He propounded study, method for the study, for the study of the mind. He propounded study, the method for the study of human mind, which he called psychoanalysis. So we have that as psychoanalysis. That is according to Sigmund Freud. Now let's continue. Now let's take note of this point. It says that industrial psychology as an academic discipline started with the pioneering work of who we call Mustenberg in 1913. All right, Mustenberg in 1913. All right, started industrial psychology as an academic field. Is pioneering work. The pioneering work of Mustenberg in 1913 started industrial psychology as an academic discipline. Now, in the history of psychology, the first book about managing human behavior in industrial organization was written by who we call Gilbert and Gilbert. All right, in 1917, Gilbert and Gilbert first known book about managing human behavior in industrial organization. And those are that is a work, the work accredited to Gilbert and Gilbert in 1917. So we have a lot of points here. So we just take it point after point like that. Like we made mention earlier, that industrial psychology focuses on individual at work. So we have that as that. Now let's take some points here, as we have some part of psychology that we should also, all right, say something about. Now, according to what we have here, we have other psychologists like the military psychologists. And when we say military psychologists, it functions in a military setting. We have one here, it's called forensic psychology. When we say forensic psychology, we are simply talking about psychology that is involved in criminology and legal issue. The psychology that is involved in criminology and legal issue is called the forensic psychologist. So we have that as that. Now, very quickly, all right, these are some points we have taken in our previous classes. If I'm not mistaken, the likes of staffing, here, as it says, it includes manpower planning and job analysis. As we have it here, we also have recruitment, not exactly the same as selection anyway. It goes a long way. Now, we have recruitment is something we have taken yesterday, and we talked about that at length. We are still talking about industrial psychology, knowing how people behave. And with all in the division of these, we have topics like selection, all right, which means you determine among the so recruited the best position, all right, the best possible earn for the advertised position. Okay, we have it here as selection. Before you talk about selection, we talk about recruitment. So among the so recruited, you still need to pick the best possible earn for the position advertised, and that is where selection comes in. Now we have here what is called manpower planning. So one of the things we did yesterday, one of the things we did yesterday, but it's just a little bit of analysis, not planning actually. Here is analysis. And here we have it as, this is done to determine whether there are deficiencies of skills, to identify what we call deficiencies of skills, to identify the deficiencies. If there are deficiencies in any skills, the need for training might be suggested, or the need for replacement. Manpower analysis, unlike the manpower planning we did yesterday, here is manpower analysis. There's also something called the recruitment. When we say the recruitment now, we are talking about controlling labor supply. All right, controlling labor supply, we talk about the recruitment. And when we talk about permanent involuntary termination, we are talking about firing. Good evening, Mr. Alfred. Came a bit late today. It's great to have you on board. Now there's something called attrition. All right, there's something called attrition. Let's quickly touch on that. Okay, now we have attrition. Now, when we say attrition, what are we talking about? Now, when we say attrition, okay, you've been there. Okay, it's good to know. Now, attrition is said to be not filling up the openings created by voluntary resignation. Created by voluntary, all right, by what we call voluntary resignation. Then we talk about attrition. So we have others like layoffs, temporary involuntary termination of an appointment. Then we talk of layoff, when an appointment is being temporarily terminated and it's not voluntary, it's involuntary. Then we have layoff. Also, we have transfers, when you move employees either literally or downward to reduce necessary costs. All right, we have transfers. So we have that as that. So we have something called preliminary interview. We have applicant blanks. We have offers. Like I said, it's going to be a lot of points tonight. A lot of points here and there. So now when we talk about preliminary interview, it is an interview option considered when number of applicants are manageable. All right, when numbers of applicants that are looking forward to occupy a particular position is manageable, then we talk about preliminary interview. Now, speaking of the applicant blank or application blank, now attributes required on the job ad Biographical data are also obtained through the blank application. Now, the blank application is more of, okay, you as an applicant for a job, you are given the opportunity to express yourself. All right, to express yourself, like you're being asked certain question, and you are given the right or the privilege to write at will. If you are given this position, if you are given this job, what do you intend to add? What values are you contributing to the organization? Okay, then we also have, and this is also a very good means of an organization collecting informations from the so-called applicants. So as well, we have offers. At this point, decision to employ is communicated to successful candidates. All right, when we talk of offer now, the decision, all right, of okay, you've been employed, is being sent to the successful candidates. And then we can now talk of placements. All right, we can now talk of placements. When we talk of placements now, successful recruitment and selection, all right, culminates what we call placements. All right, so new employees that are suitable are absorbed into the job position. Let's take that down. Placement. A lot of all these things we discussed yesterday, just in a different course. So this is like more of a lot of points are similar. But 106 PAD122. It's just that here it's a little bit narrowed down. So we have new employee are absorbed into the job position. So we have that as that. Now take note of this. Learning is a key process in human behavior. Learning is a key process in human behavior. Under this, we have what we call training. Any relative change in behavior that is as a result of practice or experience. I so much love this definition. We have any relative change in behavior as a result of practice or experience. Remember yesterday I made mention of something. I said when we talk about development, you are only working on what has been. But when we say training now, the skill was never there. It's like the process of acquiring that skill. And at the end of it, there is a change in disposition. Let's assume you have always wanted to be a programmer. Okay, that has always been your dream. Now you have gone through the series of training. Now you're a certified programmer. If it was that before you become a programmer, you do some Facebooking, WhatsApping, chit-chatting, going to the view center, frolicking with friends, that is before you become that programmer. But the moment you become a programmer now, knowing the responsibility on your shoulder, knowing how taxing it is to become a certified programmer, definitely there's going to be a visible change. You might still be doing all these things you do before, but definitely it's going to be done in a different way now. You might definitely cut down drastically how much time you spend visiting, how much time you spend off programming. because you need to continue to be best at what you do. So now, the only thing that can ensure that is what we call training. Okay, so we have that as that. So some of the basic elements, when we talk of this now, some of the basic elements when it comes to training, we have change of behavior, change occurring through practice or experience, and the behavior change must be relatively permanent. All right, just about 3 elements of training or 3 elements of learning: change of behavior, change occurring through practice or experience, and relatively permanent change. So we have that as that. Now, there are factors to training slash learning. All right, so we have factors such as external factors and internal factors. Now let's take that down. Factors, we have external and we have internal. Now for external, we have, all right, for external, we have rewards and punishment, relationships and environment. Rewards and punishment, we have relationship, and we have environment. But for internal, we have perception, we have memory, we have motivation, we have attitude, we have emotion. All right. We also have IQ, perception. Okay, just to mention about a few. Personality. So we have that as that. So it's been very wonderful tonight, and we're actually moving at smooth pace because I really want us to finish this course, if possible, next week. So the next week, after next week, we should be close to starting with MTH 106. And for those of us in the private class, I'm going to send you to where you can start practicing MTH 106. All right, going through MTH 106 classes even before we come live. All right, and I think with that should prepare you. Although I'm thinking we should have that on Telegram, so we can get to use the board, can get to, the whiteboard, the white sheet on the laptop, so we can get to ask our questions and make it more very, very interactive. But nevertheless, I'm still going to send us the link to the previous videos. Now there's something called okay, under this we have so now concluding with training slash learning, speaking of the internal and external factors, moving on, we have what is called inhibitions. Okay, inhibitions. Now when we say inhibitions, we are talking about that feeling that makes you lose self-confidence or makes you uncomfortable, right? That feeling that makes you lose self-confidence. Self-confidence, or makes you feel uncomfortable. We call that inhibition. Okay, and okay, I think under inhibitions we have 2 types. Under inhibitions we have 2 types. We have what we call retroactive inhibition and proactive inhibition. All right, speaking of the retroactive inhibitions now, previously learned experience or materials interacting to marks or disrupt the recall of newly learned material. Now, something you have experienced before. Let's say, for example, now, okay, somebody who has experienced some assault before in the past, all right, but that was about a few years ago. Now, this is recent activity now. What you have now learned in the past, that experience is now affecting or coming up where you're now having to come in contact with similar experience. That's what we call retroactive. Now, while the proactive is that material or experience exposed to after learning may affect the recall of previously learned. When you now come in contact with something recently, you now remember, oh, I remember this thing happened 7 years ago. I witnessed this. You come in contact with something recently, it takes you back. That is the proactive. All right. So on this note, we'll call it a wrap here today. And in our next class, we'll take it up from behavioral theories. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. I believe you've been able to gain a thing or two in today's tutorial. Please let's do all to keep our notes up to date. I look forward to seeing you on subsequent tutorials. Good night.